Hello and welcome to another episode of the 3 on 3 Hoops Pod, the voice of 3 on 3 basketball and part of the 3 on 3 Hoops Nation, where our goal is to grow a community around the power of 3 on 3 basketball and better player development. As always, I'm joined by the one and only Coach Jay out in the West Coast. What's going on, Coach?
If I knew, I'd be there, man.
Always a man with many words. Today's episode is one that I'm really excited about because it speaks directly to coaches, specifically to middle school coaches, JV coaches, and varsity coaches who are early in their coaching journey or still trying to find their way, still trying to find their footing. And we're joined today by a good friend of mine, a coach that I coached with recently, the last coach that I've coached with, Coach Marcus Ludwig. And Coach Marcus is someone that I respect and learned a lot of basketball from. He's been on both sides of the chair as a head coach and assistant coach. He's currently the head assistant for the boys varsity program at Baldwinsville High School in Syracuse, New York, where it's very cold. And he's jealous of our 80-degree weather here in Tampa and in Arizona, right? You got 80 degrees over there too?
It's close. It's close, about 70 something for sure.
So what makes this conversation valuable is that Coach Marcus has lived the realities that a lot of coaches are living in right now. Navigating roles, supporting a head coach, developing players, and learning how your approach changes over time. And that's something that Coach Marcus, currently lives. So even though our show is centered around 3-on-3 basketball, this episode is really about coaching perspective and how players learn, how coaches grow, and what experiences teach you that you don't always know early on. So, Coach Marcus, I appreciate you hopping along with us. Really appreciate the time and really excited for this conversation. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me.
So what we're going to do is Coach Jay and I will just alternate questions and take as long as you need to answer any question. Try not to call any players out. I'll bleep it out on the show so you won't get in any trouble. So I'll go ahead and start. So this is going to be about schemes or systems, just real coach talk, all three of us coaches, and I'm just ready to learn like I always do from Coach Marcus. So, all right. So, Coach, you've you've coached at different levels and in different roles over the years. When you look back at your coaching journey so far, what stands out to you the most?
What stands out the most is probably just the experiences that I've had at different levels and different age groups. I was pretty lucky throughout my life to actually work in the elementary school systems. So I was able to coach a third grader, male or female, young kid, all the way up to a semi-pro professional level in Sarasota, Florida. So most of my experiences, though, are at the high school level. I have about maybe 10 to 15 years running a system in 2 different states. And I was either the varsity head coach or assistant coach or JV. But I would say what stands out the most is just the ability to have those experiences, because I think that really developed me as a coach, understanding the game and how to instruct it at so many different levels. Will help you gain an understanding on how a student athlete learns how to play the basketball the right way.
Did you said you did a stint as head coach, right, at the elementary school?
Yes. So I've definitely been a head coach at the elementary, middle, high school, a little bit of college, and then a little bit of semi-pro.
Right. And how did being a head coach change the way you now approach being an assistant coach?
I think the biggest thing is just understanding your responsibilities and the roles that a head coach has versus an assistant coach. Um, every loss, a lot of times is getting pushed on to the head coach. So I think one of the biggest things you got to understand as an assistant coach, if you get hired within a program, regardless of who you're coaching with or what team and what type of league you're in, I think that there's a loyalty that has to be acknowledged right away, because again, there's a lot of pressure that gets put on the coaches that if there's not success and, the win percentage is not high, the head coach gets the blame for it. They always say that when the team loses, it's the coach's fault. When the team wins, it's the player's fault. So I think the biggest thing is understanding is really having a concrete, clear communication with the head coach in regards to the expectations.
Right.
You want to be able to supervise and provide, you know, everything that you want to provide as a coach to the best of your abilities, but at the same time, you want to have a good balance with the head coach so you're not overstepping his boundaries. And I think that communicating that even before the season starts will put you both on the right page. And
Yep.
the lack of communication, I think that's when, again, assistant coaches might overstep boundaries. Head coaches might not be able to reflect or debrief the way they really truly want to if they can't trust their assistant coach. Um, so again, just setting the tone right from the get go before even the first practice, before you meet the players, you get that assistant coaching job, get to know the head coach on his
Right.
philosophy, his theories, his strategies, and see where you compare and contrast.
Right.
And again, I truly believe this in any type of thing, much more than just coaching basketball. Building relationships is the number one key for success, in my opinion.
No, it's true. And
Right.
and you named my favorite part of being an assistant coach, and that is we don't ever get blamed for the losses. That always goes on you guys.
Never.
But I
But for the
definitely
wins,
oh,
we get some credit. You might
right.
have a nice staff, but
Right, right, right.
yeah, that's my favorite part. All
Yes,
right,
sir.
so a lot of coaches listening to us are early in their careers, and they just started coaching. What do you think younger or newer coaches misunderstand most about coaching that when they're just starting out?
I think right away, coaches that just start out, you know, um, there's an ego that we have as coaches, and we are tempted to obviously get onto that basketball court, and we kind of see the wrong thing at times. We see the scoreboard
Hmm.
or we see the records. We also see the personnel that we're dealing with. And I think they fail to realize that coaching basketball is much more than the losses and the victories. The successes and defeats, there's so much more to it than just that specific number that's on that
Hmm.
scoreboard. So I think coaches at a young age or coaches that are kind of at their beginning stages, they don't realize how much of the input and work ethic that is involved that's not even on the court.
Yep.
And they get to the point where sometimes coaches get overwhelmed because of the amount of documentation and supervision you have to do just off the court as much, um, is just as important, probably more important than what you're doing on the basketball court. Um, and then I would say another thing that young coaches like to do is they get so excited to be the guy in charge or the woman in charge. So they come up with all this creative stuff. They come up with 20 to 25 different plays. They picture this Disney world of basketball, and they fail to realize that you can present a perfect type classroom management as a teacher or a perfect football player, basketball play,
Hmm.
and you can visualize it, but sometimes, it's not going to go the way you picture it as much as you really want it to be. And as much as you draw it out in your brain, you have to come to reality of the fact that, sometimes that perfection of your play that you promoted to this team of yours, it doesn't work out. And I think as beginning coaches, you tend to point the finger a little bit sometimes, and you might not physically do it, but you'll question why he didn't set the pick or why
Hmm.
he didn't make the basket. And so you mentally, as a younger or beginning coach, almost are immature in a way that you want to make an excuse
Yep.
instead of holding yourself accountable. And I think that's one of the biggest changes I've noticed, even with me, is that when I started coaching 15 years ago, you have the question, well, why didn't he do this? Or how come he just didn't do the right thing that I taught him for 5 days? And
Yeah.
now as I get older, you kind of find out reasons why. You see the trends or you see the reasons why young athletes make mistakes, and you develop a sense of understanding of the way our brain works as a basketball player.
Yeah. And it's so much more than just basketball. I mean, that's one thing that I've learned over my years that, like you said, I came in when I first started coaching, when I was just hired as an assistant, this was for a middle school team. I did have my 10 plays that I knew were gonna work. If coach would just give me a chance to let me run these, I started out with out of bounds plays. If you run these, I guarantee we'll score.
Yeah.
So I had my plays all set, all made up. But as I've coached for over 16 years, and the things that I've learned along the way is that, man, coaching basketball or coaching in period is so much more than the sport you're actually coaching. It's developing those relationships and, really showing kids, just setting an example for the kids of how to be a young man or a young lady. And it's just how you act on the court is going to translate how you act off the court. So,
Correct.
but yeah,
Yeah,
exactly
absolutely.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Definitely on
Coach,
that.
you've matured so much since I've last coached with you. I don't know why you didn't think like this while we are coaching.
I had an assistant coach. I kept pointing the finger at him like, that's one of his 10 plays. One this way, but
What do you what do you think, Coach Marcus? What do you think a head coach actually needs the most from an assistant?
I think one of the things that they need the most is consistent communication before, during, and after the season. That's really important because you want to develop the players in your team before the season even starts. So your workouts, your strategies, and your methods on what you're doing to present, a higher level of basketball before the season even starts. A lot of people, I'm definitely in favor of student athletes that play multiple sports. I think
Same.
there's nothing wrong with that. I think your star point guard, regardless if he's averaging 30 points or 10, if he wants to go out and play football, I think he should go and play football. You only live one life.
Yep.
And I grew up actually with a couple of coaches that kind of they didn't favor that. They thought that if you were a true, baller, you were playing 24/7 basketball. And I saw that in a lot of my friends. And if they were kind of a two or three sport type player, they weren't appreciated sometimes. And then you did have those coaches that appreciated it because of, just training your body and your mind differently, getting your body right in different ways. But I'm going off on a tangent with your question, but I think the biggest thing is with assistant and head coach, um, outside of just develop the relationship is really understanding what you got and what you got and where you want to go forward with it. You have to really be realistic on things is that you have to look at your personnel. You have to look at the environment that you're coaching in. What are the resources you have? What's the background and then what's the information that is provided with you for you to be successful? What type of ball have I been given and how I'm going to handle it? And I think that's why I love team sports. Regardless if it's your 3-on-3, 5-on-5. In my opinion, team sports are the most greatest things in the world. And I think that's what happens with a coaching staff is that you create a team. And so when I see these college teams, regardless of the level, when you have 5 or 6 coaches that are working together, I absolutely love the fact that if you got an assistant coach calling a defensive play out, you got the head coach, pretty much the camera's on him because he's walking back and forth. But what they don't understand sometimes, or fans that people don't understand the game, is that there's another assistant coach that drew up the play to get ready for that victory at the end.
Yep. Yep.
So again, I think as an assistant head coach, take away the ego of the title of it and just embrace the fact that you have a partner in crime that win, lose, or draw, you guys always stick together. And what is your main purpose of it? Is it for you to get that victory or for you to develop that student athlete?
Yeah, and that's and I just want to give some context for Coach Marcus because he went from and you can probably correct my timeline here, but you went from elementary school coach, head coach, and then you did coach girls. Was that varsity or were you head
Yep.
coach for a girls
Yep.
team?
So head coach for varsity basketball team, girls, Atlanta Lakes.
Yep, and then coach, and then the assistant coach at a boys varsity team, and then a head coach at a high school for the varsity team. And after spending and for a couple of high school teams, you were a head coach for a few years, and now back to an assistant coach.
Correct.
So I know your perspective has changed from being an assistant to being the head coach for a few years, and then coming back to be an assistant. And I know you personally, so I know you want to be a head coach again. So
Right.
but just the change in perspective from being the head coach and assistant, and how I can see your growth and how you're talking. So that's giving context to the listener. So
No, I appreciate it.
um, coaching. So I don't care where you coach from. You and I coached. We didn't have a lot of wins with the team that we coached that those couple of years, but still, coaching no matter what level you coach at, middle school, high school, high level high school, coaching comes with a lot of pressure, and a lot of that comes internally. We put that pressure on ourselves, and we feel the pressure, from from the players and from the parents, from the administration or whatever. But a lot of it comes from from us. But so how has your relationship with pressure and expectations changed as you've gained experience?
That's one thing I would give to the young coaches as well, the beginning coaches,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't matter on the age. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. We really do, especially in big games. I think when you first get on the court and you're a beginning coach, going back to your original question on that, you put the pressure on so much because if you really do care, you put in the work and the ethic and stuff, and you're working at least 2.5 hours a day during practice and stuff, and then you're doing paperwork and you're doing scouting and you're doing reports and all that stuff. And when it comes down to it, dealing with pressure can be both good and bad. I truly do believe in that. The good thing about pressure is the fact that it kind of gives you an incentive of having some type of extra energy in a way that the good pressure is the fact that it might be able to instill that extra mental capacity or muscle growth when it comes to knowing the game. And you take that pressure and you live for it and you can develop yourself in a way that can you live at a high moment and stuff. And that's the positive outlook on it is the fact that when there is a lot of pressure, involved in the game as a coach or a player, can you withstand the pressure of the crowd, the ref, playing against the guy across from you that might be a Division 1 recruit and things like that. And I think that nowadays, in my opinion, I think kids can deal with that pressure way better than I could when I was in high school. That bad part of pressure was I didn't want to let my parents down. I didn't want to let my coach down and then he pulls me aside or he takes me out of the game. I didn't want to let my teammates down. So
Mm-hmm.
when I failed to rotate or I failed to use the pick and roll the right way, when I failed to I missed 1 or 2 shots, I think you can develop your relationships with the players really quick on who can deal with pressure and who can't deal with pressure, and then how do they deal with it and how can they grow because of it. Anxiety is a big thing, and that's about knowing your your players, your coaches and stuff. Even as a coach, I still have anxiety issues in a way that um, as a young coach, I didn't want the world to think I was a bad coach at first. I wanted them
Mm-hmm.
to know that I truly cared and I worked my tail off day and night,
Yeah.
losing sleep because of it. Now I lose sleep or now I have the anxiety because I don't want to let my players down. Doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what the fans think. It doesn't matter if the ref gave me the right call or not. Doesn't matter, if my dad is even disappointed to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
My job, my duty and responsibility is to provide not only a basketball player lessons on the court, but to be a well-rounded gentleman or
Mm-hmm.
a well-rounded young woman to provide for herself and her family someday. And again, that goes back to what you're saying is it's much more than basketball. So
Mm-hmm.
that pressure of me has changed. My pressure now that I put on myself is, did I let my guys down? Did I
Yeah.
really push them to their max in practice? Did I really give them the tools necessarily to win that following game and whatnot? And that's the pressure I put on me now, but it's not as much as it was when I first started coaching because I
Yeah.
was so worried about what everyone saw as Coach Marcus Ludwig is the head coach. What is he doing to
Yep.
get this victory? Because I had so many different voices and things in my head at the time. And now as I get older, it kind of goes away. It
Yeah.
doesn't affect me as much because I go back to what am I doing here? What's my main focus? What's my purpose? It's not to make the fans happy. If they smile or cheer or they yell at me and say I'm the worst coach or I'm the best coach, that's not my goal to make them happy. My goal is to make
Yep.
sure that my players are safe. They're giving me their best. They're giving me a grit that they never thought they had, and they're becoming great people overall. And if we get the win, that's great.
Yep. And that's going back to what you said earlier about as young coaches, you have to get rid of that ego. And so when you talk about I hope they don't see me as a bad coach, that's an ego thing. And now you're concerned, and that's one of the things I've always been drawn to you about. When I started coaching with you is you just cared about, did I do enough for my team? You felt like a failure because you thought you let your team down and coaches
Right.
down. You want to perform for them. So like when you start pointing to others, and that's the maturity and the relationships that you develop as you go on through your coaching career. So yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So we recently had a show about overcoaching and knowing when to shut up and knowing when to actually get in. So over the years, how much have you shifted from how much you instruct
None.
to how much you just let the players figure things out on their own? And why?
None.
Every question I've loved you guys ask me so far, but this question is really interesting. And again, this goes
Me
with
too. For
growth.
me too.
This
Trust me,
goes
I'm
with
there. I'm
learning
there
from.
with you.
Yep, yep. I
It's a
think
control thing with Coach Marcus.
it's a control thing in a way that, you go into the game thinking, okay, I'm a little bit older than these players and stuff. They don't know more than me, so you have to learn in a very, in a very timely order fashion, in the fact that your coaching and instructional abilities have to take place in practice. I really think that it really is two different chapters, and chapter one is really preparing them for that test, and that test is when they play the opposing team. So I think the instructional part is important, and that takes place in practice, during film, in a classroom, on a telephone, uh, texting, emails, any type of communication before the game even starts. And I think that's where the instructional part comes in. That's where you really build those blocks and that structure of what you're trying to develop, or what's the process of for you to teach these student athletes. When it comes to the game, I think it really depends on what type of culture you're setting from the beginning. And I also think it's what type of team you actually kind of have. How experienced are they, their age group, what type of basketball have they played throughout their career, what type of history do they have when it comes to their resume of basketball and stuff. I've noticed that my ability to open and close my mouth when it comes to coaching the players has definitely changed depending on the team, the location, the level, the type of game we're in, the strategy that I'm using at the time. There's times that my mouth won't shut up because they need that from me. And I've actually, one of the biggest things a coach should do is always do surveys, always do questionnaires and say, Coach Kev, what do you need from me to be more successful? It might be a different answer than Coach J. Coach J might just need like a tap on the butt and sit there and say, hey, I need you to work harder. He'll pick it up. Well, Coach Kev actually needs what is the purpose of the back screen? Why does he even have to do it? And I think as a good coach develops, is you'll see what you said in that original question, when to coach more, when to stay silent, when to coach less. And that's where the balance comes in. That's where it goes back to that ego. A lot of coaches just want to keep coaching, keep coaching, keep coaching. And I realized that just in the state of Florida, I coached at 3 or 4 different high schools. And there's times that my mouth had to keep going. I had a quieter point guard. I had a center in a 2-3 zone that was shifting over too much. So all I had to do was, nope, a little bit more. And that's all it took was the help. And she got the
coach them
clock.
through the
And this is a
possession.
young female. Exactly. But then I've coached a team where they make it to the Final Four every year. That team is unique because they already had it up here and they already been doing it for 15 years. And that history of that school is winning Final Fours all the time. So I could sit there and say 2 or 3 things and they would do it. And even if they didn't do it to the best of their abilities, they had the ability to pick up the slack. And so it kind of made it seem like they didn't make a mistake at times. So again, I really think it depends on the level. I think good coaches just know how to coach the player and coach the team when necessary. And I think you have to have a balance, but you have to have the flexibility behind it. You can't have that ego where, okay, everything I say is going to work. One of the best things I learned as a coach is that when I'm on the sideline during a game, the players will tell you a lot if you have that relationship. They'll tell you that you can't blitz a pick and roll because the guy's splitting it every time. You can't, I'm getting called for over the back. And you might not see it from that angle. You might just think it's a bad call, but the player will tell you like, well, he's actually grabbing my jersey. And you can learn a lot by coaching just by listening to your players. So again, in conclusion, you got to balance it. You got to know when to talk and when not to talk. But I think the most instructional times are before the game. Let the game just happen at times. And then there's moments where you got to like, okay, I'm going to instruct, because if they're not doing it the right way, then you can pick up your pace when it comes to talking to them.
Yeah, it's like that old saying that they used to say: if you're not coaching it, you're allowing it to happen. So, I definitely, I feel you on that. I've had the struggle of, damn, I'm talking too much. Oh, dang, maybe I should say more. Then I'm like, oh, let me just sit back and maybe not say anything. And then when sometimes I do that, I'm like, oh, damn, I'm just leaving my team out there to dry. So yeah, it's definitely like about, finding that mix, finding that balance. And then like you mentioned before, some players may need a little bit harder coaching than others. And then one thing that I've started to do is especially with the older players, I kind of, especially like the guards, I let them just do the coaching on the floor. Hey, such and such looks like he's not responding to anything right now. You need to be the one talking to him and let him know he needs to do better boxing out and rebounding. Things like that. So, yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. It's about finding that mix and that balance.
And it brought up a good point. What you just said is that, like I've said that before. Am I talking too much during a timeout, and am I saying too much on a play as they're running up and down the court? Am I speaking too much of what to do, when to do it, and how to do? It's funny you brought that up because again, it's really understanding. Like I said, going back to your personnel, I remember at one point I was working for Sarasota Lions, and that's a semi-pro. These are young men. I think one of the guys was 28 years old. I think I had two 23, 24-year-olds. And I remember when I brought them in right before the game, we practiced it a couple of times. We weren't able to practice a lot, but they needed more assistance on a run and jump type defense. I wanted to speed up the other team because I thought we had a lot of athletic ability. So when they came into the huddle, I had two players, and I mean, to me, they were young men, and they needed coaching on run and jump, and they didn't really get the process or the strategy behind it. It's like, well, coach, isn't it just man? And even with their age and their experiences, I had to teach them, that you want them to speed dribble. Well, why is that instead of control dribble? You want to actually push them to a side. We call it a give or a shade. I actually told them I want you to give them their left side. If they're right-handed, let them go left. Well, coach, that means they're beating me then. You remember our run and jump. This is what our theory is. This is what I want you to do instead.
Yeah,
exactly. So even though he's 28 years old, if they're coachable, it doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter how good they are. They're coachable versus a fourth grader that doesn't even know, what a double dribble is and stuff. Right. So again, it goes back to what you're saying. And I think the thing is, as you learn to just be a better coach, is at the end of the day, were you there supporting the kids when they needed you the most? So if they're turning the ball over a million times, you might have to repeat yourself all the time. Gentlemen, you got to pump fake. You got to pump fake because you're just throwing it every time. You don't want to let the bad or the negative just continually because then you're not coaching. Well, if it's something positive and they're running the play and they make a layup, you can kind of coach less because they already did it right. They completed their task and they were successful. So I've had the times where, I've won by 50 games. My voice was very quiet, but at the same time, I also wanted the guys I don't get a lot of time to get in there. So I coached them a little bit more and stuff. But then I've had times with some of the greatest athletes and I felt like my mouth wouldn't close, because I was so passionate. I was so uplifted on the fact that he knows what he's doing, but I know he can do a little bit better. So if it just means to scream one time, like shift to the left, they just kind of, they get pushed a little bit more. So it's like a spotter lifting weights.
Do you coach your assistants or your JV coaches? What are your thoughts on that? On coaching your assistants or JV coaches?
Oh, does this have any relate?
What are your thoughts? All right. No, I'm just messing with you. You're a fine coach. All right. So Coach Marcus, you were there early on when I was just trying to get 3-on-3 live off the ground. Helping, and you helped run the small group sessions, small group training sessions before our Sunday games. So I appreciate that one. But did that experience change the way you view 3-on-3 or small sided play as a development tool for players?
Yeah, when you brought the idea to me, it was something new to me. I've definitely heard of it. I've definitely seen YouTube videos or I read something in a magazine about it. But I think my personal experience for the first time with you doing the 3-on-3, it opened my eyes in another category of developing basketball players. And I think that so many people look at it as that it's got to be 5-on-5. So many people think that I got to be the superstar in high school to even play college basketball and stuff. And I think what I saw you develop was the fact that 3-on-3 is a movement, not only just for our own state, our own city that we're in, our own country, but is worldwide. And so when you look into the Olympics, when you look into things that are taking place that are in third world countries and places we've never even visited before. I've never been in Europe. I've never been in Australia. I've never been to China. I've never been to, I think I've been to Canada once. What you developed, what I saw right away was an opportunity for people to play the game of basketball, but at the same time to develop something that is growing, in my opinion. I think many years ago, 3-on-3 was just something you would do outside, but then you had creators and you have people that are following the sport, like you two coaches, and you want to develop something that, wait a minute, this is not something that is not successful. Like we're actually involved with something that is in the Olympics, and things like that. So when I saw what you're doing with the 3-on-3, not only did it impress me with just the basketball aspect of it, it was you're giving maybe non-athletes the opportunity to play a sport and to do things at such a young age.
Yep.
I saw both male and female athletes in the gym that some of them, their parents came up to me and said, what Coach Kevin is doing and what you did today when you trained them and stuff, it gave them the opportunity to experience something that they probably never thought they could, maybe in a 5-on-5 high school game. And so I think you're setting up a lot of kids to be successful in that sport that is not your traditional, I got to make the JV team. I got to make the varsity team, because that's what we got brought up. That's how I got brought up. I didn't think 3-on-3 as what you guys are developing now. So it's another open door, open window for an opportunity to explore this sport that is, to me, one of the greatest sports in the world. And I loved everything that you did. You had the ability to create a structure that you had referees, you had a fan base, you had multiple different teams with different skill levels. You had a sense of, you had photography, you had Instagram, Facebook, that you were selling it and getting people involved with it. You also had music in the background. You enlightened it to enjoy it than more just the sport. You brought it was an entertainment to me. And so that's what I loved about it, honestly.
I appreciate that. And yeah, so 3-on-3, like, I know you didn't know this because we have our tryouts separately, but when that's how I evaluate my players. So during tryouts, I use 3-on-3 because they would have the ball and we want to see what they do with the ball with pressure and stuff like that. So I use 3-on-3 for tryouts. And one thing I always say on the show, I wish I can go back and use more 3-on-3 in my practices, just to teach kids how to play. You know what I'm saying? Because you put them in different situations and you want them to have multiple reps, as many reps as possible with the basketball. Because usually when you break down, especially when you break down film, it's basically 3-on-3 because, on one side of the court, you're going to have, 3 guys on this court and you have your weak side with usually 2 players. So, you usually break down offenses and with 3 players. So there's always 3-man action and, just seeing how players, cut off screens, and you always have the weak side pass. So there's, 3 players involved in the offense at all times. So it's just a way to develop players. And like you said, get players to play that don't normally get a lot of playing time or a lot of experience. Even when they play, they don't get the ball all the time. 3-on-3, you're going to get the ball. So you can't hide on the court. And so you're constantly developing players. So I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah, and I wanted to feed off that because, this is my first time meeting Coach Jay, to compliment what Kev did with the 3-on-3. It helped develop me as a coach. Even though I wasn't coaching the 3-on-3, I was doing, obviously regular high school basketball. A lot of the terminology, just the spacing and the learning to help on defense, good on the ball defenders. And then he just kind of said it 10 seconds ago, is that when it is 3-on-3, you're going to touch the ball. Where a little bit 5-on-5, you can be not that good and kind of hide out a little bit, and you can stay still in the corner a little bit. You can actually run away from the ball in 5-on-5. So that 3-on-3, when I watched Kev do it and he showed me film and he showed me videos, whether it was a professional or what he was doing at Slam Academy, he was developing me as a coach, because then I could provide the vocabulary and the structure that he was teaching the 3-on-3 with 5-on-5. And so that's where I already looked up to him as a coach, but he brought another perspective of understanding the game more. And believe it or not, 3-on-3 can be even tougher than 5-on-5 at times, because you have more space to cover. You have more eyes that are paying attention to, to the ball handler and stuff. There's maybe where that pressure comes into place. Now you're 3-on-3, you're going to get shots. You're going to get maybe taken to the hole. You're going to turn the ball over, whatever, because you're touching the ball more. So when you're on 5-on-5, if you don't touch the ball, you might not turn the ball over or not look like you're making a mistake. But the 3-on-3, you see a lot in 3-on-3. And so that can really help develop a player and a coach, because then you can see what their skill sets are at. So
yeah, man, it's a growing sport. I think Coach Jay either ran out of battery or he got cut off swimming weight like 3 minutes. see if he comes back. Probably ran out of battery. Coach, we're waiting for you.
Man, I'm back.
Thought
I
you
got
ran.
knocked off, man.
No, you're good.
But
I let him finish his answer. Then I paused on you. So you're good with question.
yeah. I wanted to. I'm mad that I got booted off because we were in the middle of a good segment there. So let's go back to the player development part. Coach, how important do you think? I mean, you might have answered this when I was going, but how important do you think the small-sided play, the space, and decision-making reps? How good are small-sided games like 3-on-3, obviously, especially on the middle school and JV level? How impactful is 3-on-3 for player development?
Everything. I think you got kicked off. I was sharing with Kev that I think what happens with 3-on-3 is, and it goes back to that pressure in a way that can you handle that pressure? Because in 3-on-3, all eyes are on you. You're going to touch the rock. You're going to touch the ball a lot. There's a lot more space that has to be covered on defense. Offensively, you're going to get more shots. It's a little bit, it's more up tempo because it is only 3-on-3. And so I think the amount of action that takes place with just 3 players, you can develop and see so much as a coach. You know, how they slide, how they help, how they talk, how they go off their left or right foot, how they use their body and stuff. Where I told Kev the biggest thing is obviously the more players take football, for example, just the more players on a court, on a football field or whatever activity you're doing, there's a lot more activity that might be just still or that you don't have to do much. And again, that's, look at the NBA, for example. There's a lot of times that the number one plays a pick and roll. They want to create the mismatch. Well, there's 2 or 3 guys that are just literally just standing there.
Standing in the corner.
Yep. And you really can't develop a player that way. Obviously, those are NBA players that, they make millions and stuff. But from a 3-on-3 standpoint, you can develop that player and you teach them that, okay, if you're standing in the corner, you're going to acknowledge that right away. And you're going to develop them that there's a difference between being still and doing nothing. Are you doing nothing because you're afraid to do something and to make a play and to have fun playing the game? Or are you being still because you're letting the other 2 people set up their pick and roll? That way they can drive and kick it out to you. So the development, like you said, with the 3-on-3, you really need to, I think all coaches need to understand that it helps because basketball is really mental. I've been around some of the biggest, strongest, fastest athletes that they didn't understand how to play the game. So we lost 40. Kev can...
I'm trying to hold it in. So
I understand. I'm with you.
Coach Jay, I've coached some of the biggest, best athletes that I would sit there and say that they look like a Division I athlete. But when they didn't know where the trapping areas are, when they had no clue on how to rotate, when they had no clue how to go off the right foot, when they're
that's why you're playing JV, huh?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's amazing on how the development is so important at a young age.
Yeah.
Because I've coached, like I said, sophomores and juniors that you would think, again, you're assuming that, well, they just went and dunked the ball. They picked the ball up and they dunked it as hard as they can. It's like, ooh, we're going to be all right this year or whatever. Then you set up one little thing and they're clueless. They don't know what to do. And the reasoning on how can I make my teammate better? Well, coach, you told me to get the ball and just go dunk it or whatnot. Well, it's not that simple because you got a guy in front of you and then you got help side defense and all that stuff. So the development in 3-on-3 and just doing it at a young age is crucial because, again, it sets you up for the success rate that, again, how it doesn't matter how athletic you are, you can go and dunk it on somebody, but that smarter basketball player will be standing under the rim and get the charge. And then you're wondering why I didn't get the 2 points. Well, there's a thing called a charge and you can't run people over, and stuff.
Excellent.
So a lot of assistants listen to the show and they're hoping to be head coaches someday. So what should assistants who want to become head coaches really be focusing on right now?
Absolutely. I kind of knew you were going to ask me this question. So what I did was I cheated a little bit. And what I did was I wanted to show you guys something. All coaches should have a Bible.
Oh, you brought props.
Yep. I brought a prop.
Okay.
I think every coach should have a Bible, a basketball Bible, or whatever sport you coach, or if you are just a trainer in a gym to get someone more physically fit. In your Bible, it should consist of every piece of document that is going to help you develop as a coach. And what I mean by that is, you can have your basic stuff as your practice schedule, your game schedule and stuff, but I think it goes even farther beyond that is like your philosophy, put it in there. Your theories of knowledge, your daily objectives, your key fundamentals and things like that. Your general rules of what you want to do on offense, your rules that you want to do on defense and things like that. Again, it's very simple to drop the plays, the X's and O's, but it goes much more than that.
Yeah.
Do you have a first aid and CPR certification?
Yeah.
Do you have a concussion certification? Do you have a sudden cardiac arrest certification?
Yeah.
You have, it's a policy 54. I can't remember exactly what it was called, about recruiting certification. And I say this because every coach thinks that I'm going to go into the interview, I'm going to talk basketball, I'm going to get the job. But it goes back to that very first question that we talked about, is that coaching basketball or coaching any sport is truly understanding one of the biggest things that every school and every player needs is social emotional learning. Everybody needs to go through that, because I've had multiple players come into practice and not be able to make a layup. And it wasn't because they were incapable of, it was because they had something go wrong in their personal life that affected the way they played the game. So going back to the, my basketball Bible, I think it's crucial, because you need to know the rules. You need to know the laws. You need to know who's in your conference. You need to know the athletic director's information. You need to know the nurses and the custodians. You need to know all that stuff if you want to be a successful coach, because coaching is much more than just that play that you're drawing up to go win that game. And I think that's what beginning coaches don't realize. I mean, they get overwhelmed why they need to know all this stuff. And so as a veteran coach, I hate to say that, because does that mean I'm old?
Yeah, you're old. Trust me. Hey, just look down for me real quick.
I mean, technically, you're a veteran in year 2, right?
Yeah.
Hey.
But, it's amazing on how much you learn as you coach, because it comes into place. Like, for example, my final comment is the fact that you're responsible for these kids after school. And these parents, you have to develop a trusting relationship with these kids and parents, that when you're getting on a bus to go somewhere and to go play in an activity, extracurricular activity, do you have your emergency action plan ready? Do you have his inhaler if he's got asthma and things like that? Because when it comes down to it, student athlete is so important in regards to, it's much more than just basketball. Are you a positive role model? Are you a mentor? Are you a figure that they are going to follow because you are practicing the golden rule? I live by this every day, a triple threat competitor. How do you make yourself better? How do you make your team better? How do you make the game better? And every day I go through that with my players to a certain degree. Like, did you make yourself better? Did you make your team better? But did you make the game better? And sometimes they struggle with understanding that. And so I bring up just one little thing with, did you make the game better? Were you complaining to the ref every time? Or were you able to just talk to the ref and understand why it wasn't a successful clean block? And that's important to me, is the fact. And then it drives you to make sure that you're making an individual become a much better person overall than just a basketball player.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I sent you my coaching portfolio, right? That's why you hired me. I remember sending you a book. Maybe I applied to be a head coach, and they said they already gave it to somebody. So
they gave it to the better guy. Yep.
But going back to the point, like, even what you said about the parents, I mean, that's true. You are responsible for these kids, and it's very important that they trust you. Unless, I mean, we had some parents that they didn't care about their kids; they just dropped them off, and we just babysat them. But besides those
parents too.
Yeah, we did a couple. Some of these kids don't even eat.
Oh, I know,
they go home. Yeah. They go home to places that maybe we didn't grow up or have. A nice roof over our head. A community that loves us and stuff. I've been around kids that, again, to give them Burger King was gold to them, because they never ate.
Coach Jay, we had a senior night, and we had to beg parents to come to watch their kid on senior night. It was sad. It was really sad.
And that's funny that you say that, because over like the few years that I've coached at the high school here, the first time I've seen some of these kids' parents would be senior night, and I'm talking about in the whole entire high school career. Like, I'm like, oh, that's your mom.
But it just goes to show what Coach Marcus said. We might be the most important model in this kid's life.
Oh, for sure.
For a short period of time. So it's way more than just basketball. So
for sure. That's for sure. That's for sure. So, Mark, I got one last question for you. What piece of advice would you give to a coach that's just out there, man, I just can't figure this stuff out?
What advice would you give to yourself?
I think again, it might go back to that ego, but no, two things I would say that are really important is be patient. Definitely be patient, because I think as a competitor in our competitive nature, we want to win. We want to be successful. We want to see growth. We want to see our team run up and down faster. We want to see excitement, and we want to see the good and the positive. But that's not how the real world is. You're going to go through your ups and downs. You're going to have your hurdles and stuff. And I think one of the first things I would tell a coach is, number one, be patient, and let the journey just ride. And if you have success right away, that's wonderful. That doesn't happen to a lot of coaches. You have your old cliche, trust the process. Well, that process might be 5 to 10 years. Sometimes people get lucky and they get a process that's a winning atmosphere in 7 games, and you're blowing teams out. Um, you know, and then I would also say is just be prepared in all aspects of the game. And that goes back to that kind of the Bible, my basketball Bible that I have, is that if you don't realize and understand that coaching is much more than what you do between the lines, you're going to fail. In my opinion, you can win a million games or whatnot, but if something with one of those players' health concerns takes place, that's, to me, much more important than winning a basketball game. So I would say be patient and always be prepared from all aspects of what it takes to be a successful coach. And then use your resources. You two are in 2 different locations of me. You're in 2 different states and stuff. I literally have called Coach Kev, and now I got a new buddy of mine, Coach Jay, where I feel that I do fail sometimes. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? What can I do to make these kids more successful? And sometimes you got to think outside your box and literally use your resources in a way. Okay, well, Coach Jay had the same problem in Arizona, or Coach Kev had the same problem in Florida, and I'm in New York. I'm like, how did they do to fix it? What did they do and stuff? And again, I think that's really important too.
It's one of my favorite things about you, Coach. Like you don't care like level. You're always learning. You know what I'm saying? You never stop learning whatever level you're on. If you're high level, you'll ask whoever, and you're always asking what other people's opinions are. So I love that about you, man.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So look, I know it's past your bedtime. I know you're old and you're sleepy. I appreciate you staying up with us. This was really good, and I really appreciate you being willing to share your perspective and be honest about your journey. And I know coaches listening are going to see themselves in what you shared. So really appreciate you having you on, man.
No, you guys are great. Keep doing what you're doing, and I see big things. I see this growing, and you guys are awesome.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you.
Coach Jay, any parting words before we let Marcus go to
Oh
bed?
no, man, this was a good chat as always. A good we got some more good insight from another good coach, and this is what we're trying to build here, man. We're not just on here blabbing. We're trying to provide something useful that can help solve some of these pain points, because there's hundreds and maybe even thousands of coaches out there from youth level all the way up.
Or 400 on the 300 Hoops Nation.
Oh yeah, we got 4. Well, almost 400
400.
almost there. So yeah, we just want to have another vehicle, another channel that's available that can help. So this was good.
So don't forget to subscribe or go visit 3on3hoopsnation.com. Subscribe to our podcast, and appreciate you guys listening.
And the
newsletter. And Coach Marcus, any parting words? I think I asked you already, but if you have any other parting words. We didn't talk about Syracuse. I know I don't want to hit the curse button so much, so let me
how do we block him out? How do we No.
You should have tons of 2-3 zone beater plays, huh?
Oh, he hates Jim Boeheim. So we're okay. Let me, before he starts bleeping out, I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I'll keep that short and sweet. Coach Jay, I'll be totally honest with you. I never actually even cared for Coach Boeheim because he's not a player's coach. This is my opinion. He's not a player's coach.
I mean, he's obviously not a player coach, playing 2-3 zone for 30 years, bro, and not budging on it.
That was his theory, and he had different rules. And I truly, and this is where, again, I don't see eye to eye with him. I truly think he was successful in so many ways because of the way he developed, recruited, and
taught the team. He had to be a great recruiter.
I mean,
So,
no, he recruited to his system.
say it again.
He recruited to his system. Like, he recruited long guys who
Right.
play as a 2-3. I mean, that's
Correct. He like when we had a short guard, that was unique. We didn't want short guards. We wanted longer guards because you can't see the middle of the court and stuff. But no, what Kevin was saying about Syracuse is that, like, you know, location's big. You know what I mean? Like, Syracuse University is in a location where it's hard to recruit to get people to even come here. And you guys talked about your temperature. We got 80 and 80 there. It's literally, I think, 23. Yeah, it was honestly 3 days ago, it was 6 or 7 degrees. It got pushed up to 24, and you're gonna think I'm crazy for saying this. It felt warm. It actually, like, I'm not hot, but I'm like, because 7 is
It's
like
not 7.
You
Yeah.
texted me.
not 7.
You texted me 3 days ago and told me about you. I think you said the snow or whatever. You said something about the snow, and
Yeah.
we were coming off 80. It was literally 82 degrees when you texted me. So I was
Yeah.
just.
Oh, I'm not getting no tan. I don't look like you guys right now. You get me in Arizona, Florida, I'm getting a nice tan. But yeah,
Hey,
no,
spring training baseball starts next month, man. If you're a fan, you might as well come on down,
right.
man.
This is a basketball podcast. All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you when we see you. Peace.
all right, thanks, guys.